Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in part 10 of What If Reds and Blues goes to Remnant. Link down description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 19, Lend-Lease. Remnant, Evernight Castle. POV, Cinder Fall. Premise. As Salem's inner circle make a discovery, the Reds and Blues hope to get troops and resources from the planet Chorus. Cinder stood within one of many of Evernight Castle's sparring rooms, sharpening one of her swords. Emerald, Mercury, and Hazel were there as well, keeping themselves. Mercury looked at Cinder, who was in a state of anger. "Man, still angry?" he asked her. "That was days ago." Cinder pointed her sword at Mercury's neck and sneered at him, "Watch your mouth." The door to the room then opened and the sound of an ahem caught their attention. Standing in the door was Watts. "She is ready for us," he said to them. The trio looked at one another before following the scientist. All of the inner circle were now sitting in the great hall in their respective seats. Salem, on the other hand, was staring out into the window. Your Grace," Tyrion asked her, "can you tell me all, what this is I am holding?" Salem asked everyone, turning around to reveal a crystal-like object in her hand. "A dust crystal, ma'am," Hazel answered her. "That's correct," said Salem, "but what type? May I have a look at it?" Watts asked politely, to which Salem handed him the sample. The former Atlas scientist analyzed it carefully. Nothing I've ever seen." He shrugged as he gave the sample back to Salem. "Your Grace, if I may ask, where did you get this?" "One of my children came to me from an old SDC mine in Atlas." Salem explained, "The Reds and Blues were there trying to find this specific dust. My child came back with this sample and some blood from one of the soldiers themselves." "Why would they go looking for dust?" Mercury questioned. "Because it is important to them, and it is now important to us as well." "Why is that?" Watts asked. "It is the answer to all our problems." Salem explained, "These Reds and Blues just show up out of the blue." "Why do you ask?" "Because they are not from here." Everyone gave her a confused look. "Ma'am," Hazel said to her, "we don't understand. They are not from this world." Salem put it simply, "This dust brought them here. Why, you can't be serious." Watts accused her. "Are you questioning our Grace?" Tyrion asked him. Watts stuttered before straightening himself. "Right. Continue." "The Reds and Blues may have begun to shut the door on us here on Remnant." Salem began, "But it has also opened a door to new opportunities." "What are you suggesting?" Cinder asked. "If the Reds and Blues are heroes in their home, then they are bound to have enemies there as well." POV change. The Prowler. The Prowler flew through the skies over Vale as Griff piloted the craft via the cockpit. Yang was sitting next to him as his co-pilot. The Reds and Blues, along with teams RWBY, JNPR, Glinda and Ironwood were making their. "All right, we just passed Vale. I'm setting the engines for orbital flight." Griff shouted to the back of the craft. "Got it," Wash shouted back as he, Tucker, Ironwood, Glinda, Weiss, and Sarge all looked through files regarding Jacques Schnee. Lie. Sarge muttered as he went through various files that depicted Jacques as a good man, who was trying to make the world a better man. Great Samson's back hair. Why do people even believe this bastard? My father lets his money and power do most of the talking. Weiss sighed, which also keeps him from ever being arrested by the authorities. Jacques would have to do something to piss off the Atlas Council big time. Only then we can bring him to justice. Ironwood added, "At least for now the reforms we issues across the world are slowly starting to remove his control. He seems to be pretty buddy-buddy with the other councilmen." Wash muttered. "Indeed," Ironwood replied, "that's mostly because they all seem skeptical of you people. I'm the only member of the Atlas Council who supports you all. The only reason they haven't said anything is because I hold 2 seats on the council. One for the military and other for Atlas Academy. So we have an angry businessman who holds a lot of power, and has a good relationship with the rest of your government." Sarge questioned. "It shouldn't be a problem," Wash assured them. "I'm still not sure we should ask for your friend's help." Glinda protested, "What if she says no?" Tucker shrugged, "Then we'll wing it. Bride, we still have stockpiles of old tech at our old bases. Well, except for Valhalla, it was turned into a place for condos." Suddenly Yang then shouted from the cockpit, Alright, we're about to do whatever the hell this ship does to get to Chorus. So you're all gonna wanna sit down for this. Griff added. Everyone proceeded to sit down in the cockpit. The window displayed the black void of space and small dim-lit stars. The shattered moon of Remnant orbiting Remnant was nearby. Okay. This is pretty cool. John muttered as he looked at the black void. There's nothing. Weiss muttered, how is that cool? I don't know. Griff replied as he pushed several buttons, maybe there's no Ice Queen floating in the cold vacuum of space. HMPH. Weiss huffed. Alright. Griff muttered before speaking to everyone, we are all set for slipspace, just one question. Who here hasn't been to space? All of the Remnant natives proceeded to awkwardly raise their hands. Griff just stared at them in silence. Ya better not throw up on my ship, he replied before turning back to face the Prowler's controls. Lopez had converted the ship with a dust filter so the Prowler could travel between their universe and Remnant. It was the first time using this device, but Lopez assured them it was safe. Griff fired up the engines and a portal appeared in front of the Prowler. The ship was immediately sucked in before the portal disappeared. POV change, Planet Chorus. It wasn't long until the Prowler exited slipspace and were back in real space. This time in orbit of the planet Chorus. That, Nora muttered, was weird. Hey, don't throw up on my ship. Griff hissed. Just take us down, numbnuts. Sarge ordered. Griff flew the Prowler past Chorus Orbital Defense Fleet, which consisted of a few Autumn-class frigates and Marathon-class light cruisers. Of course Ironwood took immediate interest in them. I know what you're thinking. Tucker said to him, don't bother. We're only asking for troops and light armored craft. I'd rather not scare your people with large obnoxious ships. Right. Ironwood replied. Suddenly, a voice came through the comms, UNSC Prowler, this Chorus control tower, state your business here. Griff then responded, this Captain Dexter Griff, I'm here with my team to speak with Kimball. Understood. The voice responded, welcome back to Chorus. Griff flew the Prowler towards the direction of New Harmonia, past Donald Doyle General Hospital, and towards the Chorus Parliament building. The ship then landed and everyone disembarked the ship. They were all greeted by several individuals. Like the Reds and Blues, each of them wore armor. Some wore a clean sleek white armored design with green markings and an orange visor, while a lone figure had purple markings and visor. Others wore a desert tannish armor that seemed in white visor, while 4 individuals had aqua, maroon, orange, and blue markings, along with dark amber visors. That last figure wore armor similar to the tan soldiers, but with slightly sleeker armor, and a blue visor with markings. See, Tucker said to everyone, my friend. Tucker then walked up towards the tan and blue soldier in the crowd. Kimball, I assume you got our message? Tucker asked. As a matter of fact, yes, and we have a lot to talk about. Kimball replied before gazed past Tucker's shoulder to have a look at her additional guest. The one she took the most interest into was Ironwood, as the latter was of course part of the Atlas military. Kimball then looked back at Tucker, shall we continue this in my office? Yes. Tucker replied, oh, and one more thing. Have Dr. Gray do some tests on Wash and Kai, will you? Also, have Palomo and the gang give the 8 kids here a tour of Chorus. Kimball smiled, that can be arranged. POV change, Kimball's office. Tucker and his friends have briefed me a bit about you people, General. Kimball said from behind her desk. Ironwood nodded, may I ask, what exactly did he tell you? Kimball shrugged, your planet, Remnant, is suffering from political and social instability. Terrorists, criminals, and bandists run supreme in the wilderness. Now you need support from an outside source. All right, you are correct. Ironwood replied. Carolina then spoke up, Kimball, are you going to help us or not? Of course I will. Kimball replied, but I want to know the real reason why General Ironwood needs help. Glinda frowned and glared at what she thought was disrespect. Some things don't have to be known. Everybody calm down. Doc interjected, what I believe Kimball is trying to say, is that she wants to know a little more about the current situation. Learn, you idiots. O'Malley added while looking at Glinda. Despite O'Malley's rude interjection, Doc is correct, said Kimball, I can't just send in troops and supplies with half of the information. I need to know the truth. Ironwood sighed, but understood nonetheless, the truth is, Remnant is like a fire. Many people have tried to put said fire out and cover it up so the commoners could go about their daily lives. In doing so, we created an illusion that has angered some very bad people. Terrorists, bandits, criminals, corrupt business officials, they are all responsible for this. There more you must know, but we have someone back on Remnant who can explain it. Kimball muttered before looking towards a nearby wall. Santa, is he telling the truth? Suddenly a hologram in the form of a red alien appeared. General Ironwood is telling the truth. I see. Kimball muttered, anything else? Would you like to know what he's afraid of? Santa asked her. Kimball chuckled, another tie. It's currently me. Santa. Caboose shouted, if I knew you were here I would have bought cookies. Alien AI. Ironwood muttered, both teams told us of Santa's existence. Didn't think it would be possible. I shall prepare mobilizing troops as soon as possible. Kimball replied, as for weapons to arm your military general. That is going to take some time, I hope you understand. I do. Ironwood replied, thank you. You are welcome. Kimball replied back, oh, and one thing guys. The Reds and Blues looked at her. The other day we apprehended Jean and Lorenzo. Kimball announced they're currently in a cell along with the rest of the Blues and Reds. This caught the Blood Gulch crew by surprise. You found them? Sarge questioned. That's great. About time we caught them all. Griff added. I plan on sending them to a more secure prison on Earth. Kimball added, as for Temple, he's going to a different prison on Reach. You think we see them one last time? Sarge asked. That can be arranged. Kimball replied. Pav change. Donald Doyle General Hospital. And this is Donald Doyle General. Charles Palomo announced to RWBY and JNPR as he and the rest of the lieutenants stood. It was built after the war against Karen and named after the late General Donald Doyle of the Federal Army of Chorus. Why bring us here? Weiss asked. I thought it would be nice to see Wash and Kai. Palomo replied, Dr. Gray has been putting tests on them. Does seem like a bad idea. Blake muttered. Everyone entered the building and soon found the room in which Wash and Kai were in. They were joined by the purple soldier from before. All lieutenants. She shouted, you're here. Hello Dr. Gray. The four chorus soldier muttered unison. Oh, and you brought the Reds and Blues, friends. How nice. I'm Dr. Emil Gray, Chorus's top scientist. So she's like a medic that saves people, said Nora. Drive Gray helped your friends during the war. Smith continued, her brains and what goes on inside that head of hers is one of the reasons we're still alive. I thought you were a doctor. Weiss questioned. I have an IQ of 240, a prodigy can only cut open people so many times before she needs to find a hobby. Gray replied. Did you try cross-stitching? Blake jokingly asked. I sewed them back up, thank you very much. Gray answered. So how's Wash doing? Ruby asked, changing the subject. It's fascinating. Gray exclaimed, Aura is truly the most unique thing I've ever seen. The wound on Wash's neck has completely healed. Oxygen levels are normal and are circling the brain properly. It's like he was never shot at all. Screw that medication I needed. Wash quipped. And what of Kai? Bitters asked. Kai has clearly been the most interesting subject I've ever seen. Gray explained, whatever power source she absorbed is symbiotic in nature. The source gives her power, and only she can harness it. So she's Eddie Brock and Venom? Jensen questioned. More or less. Gray replied, only one can guess what she can do with it. She could fart out a nuclear explosion for all I know. Cool. Kai shouted, just like my 8th birthday party. Yeah, wait what? Pav change. Chorus maximum security prison. The Reds and Blues, RWBY and JNPR were all led through a dark hallway. Since the Blood Gulch crew's departure for Remnant, the Blues and Reds were transferred to new holding cells that separated each member. This was done to avoid them coming up with a plan. The groups arrived in a circular room. A glass window covered each wall that showed off each holding cell holding the Blue and Reds. Temple. Tucker muttered, getting the terrorists' attention. Hehehe, well. If it isn't Lavernius Tucker and the fucktard loyalist of the United Nations Space Command. Temple snickered. The Cobalt soldier then noticed RWBY and JNPR, oh, and you brought friends. How nice. Though, I didn't picture you as parental units. We're not their kids. John replied. Oh. Temple muttered, whoops. Unless. Temple narrowed his eyes through his visor and noticed Ruby's new pin, and how it bore resemblance to a pendant Caboose wore when he posed as a good guy. So, Temple muttered, the rumors were true. The great team RWBY is real. Caboose Sarge told me a lot about you. You all killed the Meta, one of the most dangerous freelancers, you have my thanks. For what? Ruby asked. HMPH, for avenging all my soldiers who were used by the freelancers, and in turn the UNSC. Well, we don't want your thanks. Yang intervened. I see that these idiots have gotten to your heads. Temple chuckled, over time they can make the brain got nuts. Temple then set his sights back on the Reds and Blues. I'm going to get out of here, and when I do, I will destroy your world piece by piece until you're all in hell. Starting to sound like Felix now. Locus muttered. Ha 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 ha. Temple laughed hysterically. Felix. The great Isaac Gates. No. I am way different than your late partner Ortez. Gates only cared about money. This galaxy needs a new class of criminal. Don't bother. Griff spoke up, cause you're all being transferred to a new prison on Earth. Except for you Temple, you're being transferred to reach where there's enough fish for you there. Temple sneered beneath his helmet as the Reds and Blues and Huntsmen all left. I'll get you all for this. You will all burn in hell. Pav change. Beacon Academy. Ozpin was standing by the Bullhead docking port as the Prowler landed nearby. The Reds and Blues, RWBY, JNPR, Ironwood, Glinda, and several newcomers exited the craft. I presume your diplomatic mission proved successful? Ozpin asked. As a matter of fact it did. Carolina replied, Professor, meet Vanessa Kimball of Chorus. She has agreed to send aid for our cause. Professor, it's about time we've met, said Kimball. Same here, Ozpin replied. Pav change. UNSC prison transport. Temple and the Blues and Reds all sat within their holding cell aboard a prison transport. The first stop was to be reached to drop off Temple before heading to Earth to drop off the rest of the terrorists. In the midst of their silence, the sound of gunfire and slashes filled the air. Many of fellow inmates began to question if someone broke out of their cell. A single UNSC soldier appeared in front of their cell and fired at an unknown target before being shot in the head. Temple stood up as two figures appeared in front of the cell. The first wore a grayish-blue suit with yellow linings. He was of middle age, had slightly tanned skin, grayish-black hair, a thick mustache and eyebrows, and green eyes. Lastly was a man in a brown coat with a white shirt underneath. He had dark brown hair, fair skin, and yellow eyes. But the weirdest thing was that a scorpion tail stuck out of his back. Mark Temple. The first man asked. Temple stared at them both. Who's asking? Chapter 20, The Blues and Reds. UNSC Prison Transport. Pav. The Blues and Reds. Premise. The Blues and Reds are given a proposition, and must escape a prison transport with some new allies. The Blues and Reds all stared at the two individuals who stared back at them. Tyrion. The first man spoke, release them. The man with the tail, now known as Tyrion, picked up the dead body of a UNSC soldier and placed his hand on the door scanner. The door opened, and the two individuals entered the cell. The first man began to wander around the cell. I must say, the cells aboard a UNSC transport are much bigger than the ones in Atlas. Who the fuck are you? Temple asked him. My apologies. The man said, my name is Dr. Arthur Watts, and this is my associate Tyrion Kalos. Temple looked at Tyrion, who was smiling evilly before looking back at Watts. What do you want, Watts? Mr. Temple, I'm a representative of an organization who wishes for your assistance. Watts explained. Our Grace wishes for your presence. Tyrion added. Your Grace. Bucky muttered, what the fuck is that? I'm afraid I cannot tell you all that. Only she will explain everything else, if you agree to meet her. Watts explained. And what if we say no? Cronet asked. Because if you don't, you'll never get your revenge on the Reds and Blues. Watts replied. Temple clenched his fists upon hearing those words. He wanted revenge on the Reds and Blues since being thrown in prison. He looked back at his teammates, who simply shrugged in a manner of, sure, why not, it seems fun. All right. Temple said to Watts, we'll meet with your Grace. Splendid. Watts replied, come, we must hurry. Not just yet, I'm afraid. Temple interjected, first we need to retrieve our robot, then make our way for the ship's reactor. Temple's right. Jean continued, if we escape the ship now, the UNSC could contact Chorus or even the Reds and Blues. Watts scratched his chin. Very well, we'll do that. Where is the reactor? We'll have to find a terminal to find its location. Temple replied. Perhaps this one, Tyrion asked, pointing his tail at the terminal he used to open the cell. Jean went over to it and tried to use it. Nah, it's just for the cell. He sighed, we'll have to find an officer's port. We pasted a command room on our way here. Watts mentioned, perhaps there's something there. Good idea. Let's move. Temple replied. The group exited the prison cell, with Watts and Tyrion leading them back the way they came. It wasn't until they entered the command they passed by earlier. Think that'll work? Watts asked. It should do it. Jean replied as he walked up to the terminal, I'll start mapping out a way to the ship's reactor. Tyrion then spoke up. Why is a prison ship capable of holding so many people, holding your little group of bad doers? The UNSC deemed us a high-level threat. Bucky explained, thought it would be smart to not have any other prisoners aboard, cause a problem amongst inmates. Got it. Jean announced, reactor's one level down. The group suddenly heard a noise coming from throughout the ship. What the hell was that? Bucky asked. Camera's not picking up anything. Jean muttered, wait, there's a shadow. Where? Watts asked. Prison block, section B. Jean replied. Could be crew members. Temple questioned. Impossible. Tyrion replied, I slaughtered them all. Watts glared at his colleague, and you're sure of that? Yes. Tyrion said to him, well ya might be wrong. Temple retorted, Cronet, Bucky, go see what it is. Bucky looked at him funny, you want us? Just go. Temple hissed, as the two sim troopers left the room. Pav change. Bucky and Cronet. Bucky and Cronet walked through the dim-lit hallway filled with empty prison cells, battle rifles at the ready. The noise in the air was a hum. What the hell is that coming from? Cronet muttered. Probably from Temple's ass. Bucky quipped. Cronet then asked another question, so what do you think of our new friends? Friends isn't the word I'd use. Bucky replied. Forced acquaintances. Cronet suggested. Bucky nodded, yeah, that seems good. Suddenly, the humming got louder until a large blue portal opened up in front of the two criminals. Out stepped three individuals, the first wore white armor with gold accents, and carried a golf club of all things. The second wore black and green armor, had 4 arms, and carried a plasma rifle and green energy sword. The last guy wore gray armor with orange accents, and carried a hammer. Oh shit. Bucky muttered. Cronet on the hand was more dramatic, it's them. Run. The two proceeded to run back down the hallway in panic, getting the attention of the three figures. I knew it. After them. Atlas Arcadium Rex shouted at his comrades before pursuing them. Bucky and Cronet ran down the hallway, shouting at Temple and Watts, who were standing in the door to the command room. Temple. Close the door. Bucky shouted. What? Why? Temple asked before getting a good look at who was right behind him and Cronet, oh shit. Hurry up. Bucky and Cronet successfully ran inside before Temple locked the door. Atlas however managed to leave quite the dent on it after the door was completely shut. What was that about? Watts asked. It's them. Cronet huffed out of breath, it's them. Them what? Tyrion asked, not really interested. Temple stuttered in fear before speaking, okay. Look, I need you people as much as you need me. But if you open that door, they will kill me. They are coming for us. What? Tyrion repeated, could you be a little more specific? We managed to get out of prison before. Temple explained in fear, several weeks ago to be exact. But afterwards, we found ourselves, pursued by something. We thought they were members of ONI, naval intelligence. Then we realized they are much worse, agents of time, space, life itself. Turns out, we were manipulated by their old leader to build a time machine, and we nearly destroyed a planet. So now, they want us to pay for our crimes. Basically speaking, you're wanted by literal gods. Watts said to him. Jean shrugged, true, but they're actually advanced artificial intelligence programs that influence lesser beings. Suddenly a jolt was felt as Atlas tried to break down the door with his golf club. Temple then looked at Watts, you people really think you can stop those things? It shouldn't be a problem. Tyrion laughed maniacally. Temple sighed in frustration, alright, fine. Great. Tyrion cheered, let's go to work. Alright, so you say these things are AI constructs, so they're bound to run on electricity. Correct, said Watts. Basically. Watts grinned, I have an idea. POV change, cosmic powers. Uru. Atlas grunted as he tried to break open the door for about the 50th time. Give it a rest, sweetheart. Kalorama said to him amused, they are bound to open the door any second. Ah. Burnstorm, can't you do something? Atlas asked his other companion in frustration. No. Burnstorm replied, but I find your anger trying to open a door quite amusing. Atlas growled, you're useless. Did you try turning the knob? Callie asked him. Atlas turned around to look at her, is that supposed to be a joke? No, seriously, did you try that? She repeated. Oh. Atlas muttered, I never thought of that. Atlas turned back to the door and turned the knob. Sure enough, the door opened with no problem. There was just one problem with the room. They're gone. Burnstorm muttered. Where did they go? Callie questioned. I don't know. Atlas replied. Hey ugly. Atlas and party turned around to see Temple and a man in a suit holding a large gun together. Kiss this bitch. Temple quipped before Watts pulled the trigger, sending a large EMP wave at the cosmic powers. Ah. Atlas grunted in pain, never before had he or his family been hurt before. Luckily for them, it was a weak blast. Temple then fired a second shot, that sent the trio flying into the command room. Tyrion then climbed down from the ventilation shaft and locked the door, making sure that they did cause any harm to them. Okay, that won't hold them for long. Temple said to Watts, but it should give us enough time to destroy the reactor and get out of here. Good. Watts replied, how are the others doing? Temple then got his comms, how are we doing boys? We found Lorenzo. Cronut replied, just his head, but that should be a problem. Well, some things never change. Temple muttered, meet up with Jean in the reactor, we be there too. POV change, reactor control room. Temple, Watts, and Tyrion all made it to the reactor control room, where they saw Bucky, Cronut, and Jean. In Cronut's hands was a brown helmet similar to the blues and reds. How are you doing, Lorenzo? Temple asked the helmet. Good. No body, but that's just how I am. Lorenzo replied in Italian. What did he just say? Tyrion asked. Nothing, he just speaks Italian. Temple replied before looking at Jean, are you finished? Yeah. Jean replied, this place is ready to be blown to Kingdom Come. Sure enough, several generators in the room started to short-circuit, while others exploded in a fiery inferno. The cosmic powers, who were still stuck in the command room, felt the ship rumble. That's not good. Burnstorm muttered. This place is gonna blow. Atlas shouted before summoning a portal back to Starseeds, we're leaving. Back in the reactor control room, Watts pulled out a small device. Temple then looked at him, hey, this place is gonna blow soon. Might I suggest we get your ship? That won't be necessary. Watts replied as he pushed a button on the device. What do you mean? Suddenly, a bright light engulfed Watts, Train, and the blues and reds before dispersing. They were now gone, and the ship exploded into oblivion. POV change, Evernight Castle. Watts opened his eyes to see that they were at the footsteps of their lair. He turned around to see the blues and reds all looking around in confusion. Temple looked up at the dark red sky, a shattered moon hung in orbit nearby, what the fuck? Where are we? Our base. Watts replied, welcome to our universe. Universe. Temple muttered, what do you mean? Everything will be explained, if you follow me of course. Watts said to him. Alright Watts. Temple sighed, take us to, your leader, or whatever. Watts and Tyrion led the blues and reds inside Evernight Castle, which to them was just as weird and creepy as the outside world they saw upon arriving. Watts then stopped at two large doors, and instructed them to wait there until he came back. After waiting for a few minutes, the doors opened and Sim troopers stepped inside. Within this large room was a big table with several chairs, and several people sitting in them. Watts and Tyrion sat near the head, while the others were of mystery. The first was a young woman with fair skin, long black hair, and amber eyes. She wore a red dress with yellow accents and heels. She glared at the blues and reds in anger for some reason. Next was a woman with dark skin, short mint green hair, and red eyes. She wore a brown crop top with white and brown pants. She had two pistols with sickle blades attached to them on her back. Next was a young man with messy silver hair, fair skin, and gray eyes. He wore a black and gray jumpsuit with fingerless gloves and combat boots. Second to last was a man that stood off to the side, rather than sit down. He had tanned skin, brown hair, a beard, and hazel eyes. Wore a two-tone olive green coat over a black shirt, a belt around his waist, and black pants with several pouches. He merely stared at them nonchalantly. Lastly was a woman who sat at the head of the table. She seemed to be more unnatural than anyone else in the room. She had deathly white skin, reddish-black veins flowing down her arms and face. Her hair was just as deathly white as her skin, tied up in a large bun with 6 offshoots warped together that suspended several obsidian-colored ornaments. She wore a very long short-sleeved dress that completely obscured her feet. "Welcome, Mark," the deathly woman said, "I've been expecting you." Temple merely stared at her before looking at the others in the room. The woman in the red dress still showed anger in her eyes, while the boy and girl merely remained quiet. He then responded. "I take it you're, their Grace?" He questioned. "That is correct," she replied. "I am Salem. I assume you've already met Watson Tyrion. These are Cinder, Mercury, Emerald, and Hazel." Temple looked back at the now identified individuals. "Hi," Mercury muttered. "Hi," Bucky muttered back. "So let me get this straight." Cinder spoke up in anger. "You're the evil doppelgangers of the people who ruined our plans, took the Fall Maiden powers from me, and started eliminating our operatives in Vale." "Yeah, I don't follow up on that," Jean replied. "You even sound like one of them," Emerald added. "Yeah, I get that a lot," Jean said to her. "All right," Temple butted in, "what do you want with us?" "Straight to the point, I see," Salem replied. "Very well. The Reds and Blues have been here for quite a while, and they've allied themselves with our enemies. Professor Ozpin and the Huntsman Academies have ravaged, scourged our plans to rule this world. They even exposed our plan to attack Beacon. Now, their coalition is working round the clock to remove anyone who does work for us." Temple stared at her before speaking. "So you want us to stop them?" "I want you to help us," Salem replied. "Help us get revenge, and you get revenge on the people who ruined your life." "What if we say no?" Temple then asked, which got some questionable faces from the room. "Are you questioning our Grace?" Tyrion accused him. "Maybe I am," Temple shot back. "And who said you can speak?" Tyrion sneered before Salem interjected. "If you say, fine by us. You get to go home, and do whatever you want. But if you really want revenge, this is your opportunity." Temple looked back at his team who just shrugged before looking back at her. "All right," he replied. Salem grinned. "Excellent. But I have some requests first." Temple added. "Very well," Salem replied. "What is it?" "First off, we don't work for you. We work with you." "No, Your Grace, no nothing." Temple started. "Secondly, I am down several men. I'll need someone to help fill in the ranks on my team. There are other sim troopers loyal to my cause, so that could help too. Lastly, I want to know how you found us." Salem remained quiet for a few moments before speaking. "To answer your last question, I found you with this." She held up a vial with a red liquid in it. "This is the blood of one of the sim troopers. I meditated on it and looked through the memories of that person, where I found you people. I had Watts here develop a device that would bring us to your universe and back. As for your other request, I will live with them and will try to find others to fill your ranks. You have yourself a deal." Temple nodded in satisfaction. "Good. Let's get to work." Pav change. Starseeds. A portal opened on Starseeds as Atlas and his brethren all fell out, exhausted after failing to kill the Blues and Reds. "That went worse than I expected," Callie muttered. "At least we're still alive." Atlas sighed. "Come, we must warn the Shiznos at once." And this is the end of part 10 of this What If. Do not forget to leave a comment down below, subscribe to this channel.